everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Latzia hanging out in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for you guys today, as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live. Tell a friend Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, the DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and plenty more places. Plenty of stuff to get to here. Going to have a little bit of reinforcements come in. Our buddy Jessica Smetana, co-host of Golic and Smetty with my dad, that you guys can check out here on DKN, as well as over on the Dan Le Batard Show. We're going to ask a Yinzer because yesterday, man, people seem to feel some type of way at the implication that you shouldn't fire Mike Tomlin after a season where they somehow won 10 games and got into the playoffs. But apparently, Yinzers feel a little bit differently. So, Dad, we got to bring in your partner to try and ask her what the hell's going on.
And she's also hot about the officiating in that game against Buffalo as well, and some of the non-calls that went on for her team. So she's sticking up for Pittsburgh all the way around. She was getting after it pretty good when we were talking about that.
There's a lot of passion in the Berg. We appreciate that. We understand it. We're trying to understand it even better by bringing in one of your own. But we got to bring in one of our own today because we have that. We have plenty of news in the association from last night. Awesome game between Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic as the Nuggets and Sixers played. So our good buddy Charlotte Wilder here, back for another Wilder Wednesday. You guys can catch her co-hosting Oddball with Amin El Hassan every day but Monday during the week. Charlotte, what's going on, bud?
Oh, just living the dream over here, Mike. It's freezing cold in New York City, which is why I am dressed like I am headed to the mountain, but I'm not going skiing. I'm just going to work. So here we are.
You know what, Charlotte, you provided an important insight for us right off the bat, though, because we saw it. Obviously, you do. For anyone not watching on YouTube or DraftKings Network, Charlotte does have like a very ski-friendly outfit on, and I made the admission.
It's just a fleece. It's just a fleece.
It is just a fleece for what it's worth.
But yes.
It's a very purple, wonderful ski. Not to get like two first take inside outfits here, but we did. And I realized that me and my dad had no idea what the term après ski meant. And it was really emblematic of the difference between us and everybody else on this show.
Well, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like a cool thing to know. It just means that you're kind of there are a lot of words I would use to describe people, including me in my past, who do that. It's like not. I don't think that says anything about anything, Mike. That's what I'm trying to say.
What is it? What the hell is that? What?
Okay, it just means that after you go skiing, you have a drink at the ski lodge.
It's
French. It's French, Golic.
So just so I understand, it's not the name of a drink. It's just the action of getting a drink, kind of like golf. I'm going to the 19th hole.
Yeah, big
to get
man.
a drink.
Yes.
But we've pulled some sort of French word for this, right?
Yeah, because skiing, you're in the Alps. You get a few runs in. You go to the lodge. You get whatever French drink they have, and it's after you ski, so it's après.
So it encompasses any or all of the entertaining, social, antisocial, musical or non-musical activities you do after the day skiing is done. So yeah, that can involve a beer, fireside chats, live music.
Okay. Do it this way, Charlotte, for my edification, because I'm the old man dummy here. Use it in a sentence.
All right. So, oh my God, I don't know if I can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah,
okay.
It's one of those things that's kind of like difficult to use in a sentence. I think it's more
You say, bro, let's go après ski, dude.
Let's go.
Is that how you
Let's
use
go
it?
après ski, dude. That's what you say.
When do you say that? While you're skiing? Before you ski? After you ski? I mean, I'm very confused at the
après ski
also
drink. Maybe that's how you'd use it. Like, let's go grab a little après ski. Like,
or if you're really obnoxious, it's like, what are you doing après?
Oh,
well, that's what I'm wondering is, can we take this to other places? Like, can I have an après lawnmower beer later on? Like,
yes, absolutely.
You know what this is? This is people trying too hard to come up with something. Let's go do something after we ski.
French.
We got to come up with a word. We got to come up with a friggin' word that I asked people who knew what the word was to use it in a sentence, and I saw blank stares on their faces for a while. So, what the hell are you doing here?
from people doing. I think it came from people doing this in France. So it'd be like if you say, "What are you doing after you ski?" For them, it's them saying, "What are you doing after you ski?" And then Americans took it and to make it sound fancy for when they sit in snow boots and drink.
So this is something else we stole from them because
it's just people speaking a different language. Like I will offer them that grace. They were just doing their thing.
So it's like me saying I'm going to get some French fries. Stealing it from the French.
Après-ski could mean anything. Like you want to go like mash a hottie toddy or something like that, or you want a basket of fries? Go ahead. Maybe that's your après-ski.
Just went over Emerson.
Hear me out. Après-ski is to skiing what hottie toddy is to Ole Miss fans.
I do like the idea that that's our export is like, oh, people over in France are like, oh yeah, you guys want to go mash a hottie toddy after the Ole Miss game, and that's the cultural exchange of gifts that we've got there.
That's
we've wandered far from the ski path here, and we're going to get back on it since we've got Charlotte here. Après the basketball game last night, we all got to take in 2 bits of large excellence. Charlotte. This run by Joel Embiid that he's on right now 18 straight games with 30 points. They beat the defending NBA champions last night. Where are we on the 76ers belief-o-meter as Philadelphia is cratering right now? They need this after what happened to the Eagles this weekend. How hopeful should people be that this could actually be the year for the 76ers?
Well, because it's Philly, I don't know how hopeful because we've seen what happens to hope this year in Philadelphia, but I think they should be cautiously optimistic because the Sixers are, what are they? They're 23-6 when Embiid is playing. Embiid's streak, he had at least 30 points and 10 rebounds for 16 games. That's tied with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the longest streak, besides Wilt Chamberlain, of course. And I just think that he's playing at such a MVP level, whether he can play the 65 games he needs to play to be eligible for that award. To me, that doesn't really matter because as long as, he said it himself. He was like, as long as I'm healthy going into the postseason, like, I don't care how many games I play because I think at this point, a championship, he's also already won MVP, so he has a little bit of leeway. He's giving, it's okay if he doesn't win it 2 years in a row, but they win a championship. Like, that checks out. But, I think that Philly right now, they look really good. They beat Boston. They beat Denver. And I think it was a very kind thing for them to do after the Eagles loss to provide the city, to give the city a little bit of something. But I think they also better not get everybody's hopes up and then, crap out because that would just be that would be so cruel. That would be so cruel. I can't think of a letdown 3 in a row like that. When was the last time that happened to a city where they just kept getting close and not making it in all sports?
In all sports, I don't know if we've seen anything quite like what's gone on in Philadelphia in recent history with some of that, where it's like this all-encompassing bit of like sports edging, but it's I'd say this, Dad, going to that last night. Charlotte's right, by the way. The 65 game rule, we've talked about that butting up here. And Joel's approach is right. Like, if I was a player who was ascending and my star was on the rise and I had injury thwart this in a way, I would certainly feel some type of way about it because these sorts of resume points, while they seem a bit superfluous now for Joel, who's this known commodity and who now, especially in NBA circles, is getting towards that, well, now you need a ring or else we're going to keep demeaning you thing. If you're a guy on the come up, those are the kind of resume points that help you in contract negotiations, that wind up on your Wikipedia page and are how people are going to discuss you post-career. But for Joel Embiid, I can understand it really doesn't matter for him now. And this was always the pushback on the 65 games is for a certain group of teams. And I would say like the Clippers, who were balling last night too and have looked great this season. It's all about preserving for that postseason run based on where a lot of these guys are in their career.
And Embiid even said he's fine with the 65-game rule. By the way, he can only miss 8 more games the rest of the season to be eligible for this. Though I will say, and I'm not going to get into them, Go look it up yourself. If you don't play 65 games, there are still ways to win the award, which, my God, start reading that. It kind of reads like the situations for teams to get into a playoff in the NFL. But you can actually get awards if you don't play 65 games, but certain things have to trigger that I'm not going to get into. I loved this game. I mean, when you see two great players, Charlotte, and especially two big men. Now, the 5 doesn't play like the 5 anymore. There were 8 3-pointers by these two guys between the two of them. Embiid shooting 6 of them. They play different, but it's it's still two great players, big men. 78-78 at halftime. I think it was the 6th time both teams were 78 or more at halftime. They let me down in the second half. It was only 48-43, 76ers, so the scoring was down. But, I mean, Denver going on the 12-0 run at the end of the third. Embiid scoring 10 straight for the 76ers in the fourth. But, Charlotte, the guy that's impressed me, we already knew about Embiid, but all of a sudden, Tyrese Maxey, who we keep talking about, kind of was, all of a sudden, the spotlight was on. When Harden was gone, it was like, okay, does Philly have enough with Tyrese Maxey? I think he put in like 25 last night, but he's been playing well. To me, Embiid is Embiid. We know what he is, but he needs help to win, and Maxey, I think, has really, really stepped up to the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a big year for sort of adorable and highly skilled Tyreses in the NBA. Yeah. Maxey, Halliburton, I think, are two of the most exciting guys to watch right now. I also think that, I mean, talk about giving a city something. Maxey is so delightful to watch. I always love players who play with this. I think we talk about joy a lot in sports, like, oh, he plays with joy, or there was such joy in his performance. But I think that delight is something like a little bit more mischievous almost. I think that there's something a little bit where you're watching Maxey play and you're like, he's having fun, but he also knows something that we don't about what he is capable of. And he is having the time of his life proving that. And I think, I mean, clearly the Harden deal for everybody was just the best thing that could happen, because the Clippers, as you said, GoJo, are cooking, and so are the Sixers, and it's fun to watch.
Tyrese Maxey, and this is, as soon as you said mischievous, it crystallized in my head. Tyrese Maxey plays basketball like your dog that's got something in its mouth that you don't know what it is, and it starts to run away from you, and it's got that little grin like, oh, I'm gonna keep chewing this and you can't get it away from me. That is exactly the joy that Tyrese Maxey plays basketball with. It is so crystal in my head. And you're right, between what he's done, between Tobias Harris and what he does, is I think the really important third leg of that team as we approach the trade deadline is going to be very important. Speaking of the trade deadline, Emerson, we probably need to get to the big news, I think, in the NBA from yesterday. You mentioned the Tyrese Halliburton over in Indiana and the Pacers. They are now the center of what could be one of the big blockbuster deals around the trade deadline.
Yeah, baby. Spicy P may just end up with a team whose name starts with a P. The Toronto Raptors and Indiana Pacers involved in active trade talks around two-time All-Star Pascal Siakam, who's in the final year of his contract with Toronto here. This is all according to Shams, guys. So the proposed deal would involve Bruce Brown, Indiana's most expensive player at $22 million, and 3 first-round picks. So the potential protections on those picks are not yet known, but talks have advanced here over the past few days. So we're talking about a Pacers team, 23-17 right now, coming off an in-season tournament final appearance. The Pacers have eyes on contending right now. This move would certainly help, would it not?
It would. It's interesting, Dad, looking at this on face value, the value of this, because moving that kind of pick allotment for a guy in Pascal Siakam, who has basically made it clear he's in the final year of a 38. Well, he's in the final year of his contract, worth $38 million. He's 29 years old, and he wants the max. He wants the 4-year max or the 3-year max, whatever the version he can get, cashing in, and made it clear that once the Raptors weren't going to give him that, he wants to reach free agency now. And so there's this risk reward, if you're another team bringing him in, of doing this without the assurance that he's going to sign with you long term.
So, so I see from the Pacers side, you have the young star and Halliburton, who, we've talked about so much. You have the Pacers sitting in the 6th slot, I think 8 games out of first. But Charlotte, anywhere he goes, and obviously the Pacers know this, but this is always, we talk about who has leverage in a situation. you look at the leverage Siakam has. I mean, you better be ready to pay him unless you're going to rent him. I don't think the Pacers are in a position to say we just want to rent, right? They're sitting in the sixth slot. Even getting Siakam this year, I don't know if that's going to make that jump to put them up at 1 or 2, but it's another piece that you can start to build around with a young superstar like Halliburton. So I would imagine the Pacers would have to be in on saying, okay, we're going to trade for him, then we got to pay to this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine. I think it would be a weird move to get Siakam, who I think would fit really well with the Pacers. I think that people don't. I think a lot of NBA fans underestimate Siakam, 2-time All-NBA. He's a great defender. He won a championship. We saw what happened when he played with Kyle Lowry. Like, they looked amazing. And Halliburton is not Lowry. He's better than Lowry. Sorry, look, Kyle, you're great. But Halliburton is something we haven't seen in a long time. A true point guard, just making everybody around him look better. Imagine if he had a big man like Pascal who could actually, set a pick and roll, who could be there in a way. And especially, I mean, he can make stuff happen in the post. He will just. It's not a tall order to make the Pacers defense better, but Siakam will do that. And I think I looked at Pacers Reddit and Twitter, and it's really fun to see a fan base that is so excited because things are going well for the first time in a long time. I mean, they've had Halliburton for a while. They've known how good he is, but things are really starting to gel. And I think it would be really fun if he's there. I also think, look, if they do rent him for the season, as you said, senior, they could probably get something great back in return. So either way, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially because it seems like all they're going to have to give up at the moment is Bruce Brown.
And Charlotte, isn't that arguably the Pacers' biggest hole to fill right now is that power forward position? Because I think you got Jalen Smith and Obi Toppin just rotating minutes there.
I do,
definitely.
I do worry though, because Dad, you mentioned they've need to have him around there long term. I don't think that's the issue. Would Pascal agree to that? Because to his point, right, it's kind of been understood. He wants to get to free agency. He wants to test the waters there. So they can want it till they're blue in the face. But if you don't have the assurances from him in the lead up to this and the conversations with his agent about this potentially, that this is a guy that would put pen to paper after the season. Yeah, Bruce Brown, you're offloading a contract that's pretty expensive for you, but then the potential of 3 first-round picks, that's not insignificant capital for a guy you'd have for half a season where no one expects this to be making you a championship contender.
So Charlotte, would you make this deal if they came to you? You're the Pacers. Are you making this deal and not sure if he's going to sign to stay with you? Do you need assurances that he is going to be there if you're going to make this deal?
I don't know. Does anybody ever get assurances? Would you believe someone who's yeah, I'll stick around?
Listen, if I say I'm going to send somebody, in the middle of the night, if you lie to me, maybe that'll work out. I'm just kidding, obviously.
Maybe that'll do it. Threaten him.
I had the best version of that happen ever when I did the offseason program with the Saints, and at that time they were trying to pass a bill that would affect workman's comp for NFL players and for professional athletes in the offseason. So the NFLPA had a bunch of us get in a bus and go to the state capitol in Louisiana, and Drew Brees went out there and talked on the floor, and it got the bill shelved. The show of force absolutely worked, and some of the politicians wanted to take pictures after, and Mark Ingram, or one of the guys, looked at the politician that was coming up and was like, wait a minute, which way would you vote on the bill? You got to tell us before that. And the guy looked at all of us and went, would you believe me if I told you anyway? And we're like, that's not a glowing review of our political system, that you just think the assumption should be that why would we trust you? You're a politician. So maybe that's the kind of instance we're looking for as far as the assurances that the Pacers may or may not get. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Latzia, and our dear friend Charlotte Wilder. Will be a full quad box coming up here soon. Jessica Smetana from the Dan Le Batard Show going to stop by as we assess the Steelers situation and Mike Tomlin's future. But I do have to laugh. And Charlotte, this might be a little bit too close to home for you considering the Patriot proximity, but we are getting all the announcements of every team interviewing certain head coaching candidates and seeing in back-to-back days the Atlanta Falcons interview Bill Belichick and then Jim Harbaugh now as one of their most recent candidates. I saw Adam Schefter report that last night. Charlotte, do you feel like those interviews are worlds apart or somehow more similar than because I can't imagine two more opposite personalities walking into the interview room one after the other.
You know, though, you know how sometimes things can be so opposite that you just come full circle, that it's actually just the other side of a circle. I feel like that for some reason, I think that a Harbaugh interview and a Belichick interview are actually somewhat similar. I guess I could see Jim like talking more about stuff that he wasn't asked about. They'd be like, so Jim, what kind of culture would you create in the locker room? And he'd be like, you know, I think what's so incredible about Canada geese is the way they fly together and never give up. And they're like, no, cool. But and he's like, but the reason that form, and I could see Bill being like, well, what do you mean? What kind of cult? Like, I'll bring the same culture. Everyone's going to do their job. And for some reason, those two things both answer the question so poorly that I think it's kind of the same. I think it's sort of the same deal.
I agree, and I want the person, obviously the owner's going to, I would imagine, maybe, I would think the owner may be in these interviews, maybe not, but whoever is, whenever they're done working in the NFL, I need them to do an interview about interviewing Bill Belichick and then Jim Harbaugh, because you did it perfectly, Charlotte. I mean, what Bill's answer would be, we're on to week one. You know, we're just going to be on to week one, you know, and Jim, so true that you almost need to be like, Jim, over here, Jim, let's come back to the lane here. But Jim, listen, we have fun with him, but dude can pick, you know, Canadian geese and work it into how he's going to build a team. I mean, it's amazing how he does that. His own brother John said he may be the best team builder there is out there. But yes, it is. The difference, I think, is amazing, so much so it may be like the same. And I do think, Mike, that he is going to end up with the Chargers, making a whole lot of money doing it.
I think it's BS that we get to watch players go for the biggest job interview of their life in a made-for-TV spectacle that is the NFL Combine, but we don't get to watch coaches interview for all these jobs. I think as the NFL continues to find ways to expand its footprint as a TV product and as the largest thing in North American sports, I think this is the next step where we need some version of the coaches interview process as a made-for-TV event. Because I absolutely would have signed up for watching the interview between Jim Harbaugh and the Falcons, 100%.
You know how Netflix is doing all of these docs, like they just signed the new one with LeBron to follow, you know, him and Tatum and a few other guys during the season, and they have Full Swing and they have Drive to Survive. The Netflix reality sports series that I want is off-season business. I want to go inside when the rumor mill is happening. I want to go inside the coaches' interviews. I want to go inside the executive's office. I want to meet the obnoxious intern who like actually has a good idea and they're pissed that they have to listen to him. I want the like whiz kid who comes in and everybody's like, well, what do you mean these are the analytics? And she's like, you have to trust me. And then just like, that's the drama I want. I want The Office, but the NFL, because I guarantee you whatever goes on in the off season in those buildings is not too far from the sitcom we all know and love.
I like the idea of that as like almost like a single camera sitcom now, because I was thinking more like, and this is a throwback in terms of reality television, but I was thinking like The Apprentice but the NFL version where we bring it in here. Obviously, we would need a different host at this point for a number of reasons, but I do think that that style, especially given the time we're at now with hirings and firings, would be a pretty interesting format. But Emerson, I do like the idea of the single camera comedy.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as like, Ted Lasso. If you've seen the last season, he was in that American restaurant in Amsterdam and he's trying to learn the triangle offense. Like, I totally see Jim Harbaugh, after crushing a plate of lemon pepper wings at Magic City, trying to learn the triangle offense so he can save Atlanta's season.
Yeah, that is true. I saw someone tweet that the other day, speaking of, that there was a non-zero chance that Bill Belichick was at Magic City crushing lemon pepper wings, and that thought alone would sustain a lot of people through a lot of hard times. So it's interesting watching the wheels turn like that. I know Dan Graziano did an article where he kind of predicted what head coaches would land where throughout this process. So we got a lot of time to get into that. Charlotte, I was curious coming off of Wild Card Weekend for you, if you had any big takeaways from that weekend, whether it was the collapses that we saw from the NFC East in Dallas and Philadelphia, whether it was promise or excitement about the young guys and CJ Stroud and Jordan Love going forward, if there was anything that stuck out to you among that group.
Well, my wilder card weekend, I would say, review.
Wow, we missed the boat on that, by the way. Next year's Super Wild Card Weekend watch party for Gojo and Golic is absolutely going to be the Wilder Card Weekend watch party. So I apologize for messing that up, Char.
No. Look, we all make mistakes, Gojo. I appreciate you. No, just kidding. I think watching the Cowboys lose was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in sports. Couldn't have happened to a nicer owner. I also think that this was probably influenced by the fact that I was watching with my husband, who is a Giants fan. So that was very exciting for him. If your team can't win, at least your enemies lose. And I loved that the Packers succeeded. I loved it. I think that game, to me, a lot of these games were not close, except for obviously, Texans.
Lions, Rams.
There we go. Okay. Don't you love that when you're talking as your job about sports and all of a sudden you're just like, my brain has decided not to know.
Oh, buddy, you've walked into the exact right dojo for that. I don't know if anyone in sports media does that quite as much as me and my dad.
I just want everybody listening to know that's sort of a battle you're just constantly fighting in your head. Like, I need to talk long enough to remember who this other team was. But no, I also am very happy for the Lions. That was a truly delightful win. Dan Campbell in the locker room after giving the game balls away. I mean, I had tears in my eyes. And he looked like he did too. And so those were probably the highlights for me. I felt just sad for the Eagles. Like, there wasn't anything funny about that collapse in terms of Kelsey and just, God, Philly. I know that everyone's like Philly, the worst fans, but I admire, as someone from Boston, I admire them. I admire their obnoxious fandom. And so I do feel for them, Gojo.
That is interesting to me, Dad, that discrimination between Dallas and Philadelphia in that regard, because I think Dallas fans do have quite a different connotation than Philadelphia fans, who are a lot more like their Boston and even New York counterparts in terms of passion.
Oh, yeah. Listen, being in Philly most of my career, I enjoyed them. They were hard on you if things weren't going well. And you saw one fan threw a bucket of popcorn on Sirianni. But we know some of the things they've done in the past for a team that was just in the Super Bowl last year, went through a bunch of injuries, lost both their coordinators. It certainly has been a bad year for them. And we're already seeing changes from teams that have lost, like you mentioned, off air before, the Browns. The year they had with 4 quarterbacks, fired 3 coaches on the offensive side. So you're going to see changes. But going forward, I know as we get into this divisional round, to me, the two of the biggest things we'll talk about is the first-year starting quarterbacks. How's CJ Stroud going to do against that Baltimore defense, and how is Jordan Love going to do against that San Francisco defense? Two great matchups I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, the challenge and degree of difficulty only increasing for the young guys that made it through that first wave. Coming up next, we'll get to the second wave with our buddy Jessica Smetana.
Steelers losing to the Bills, giving us one of the greatest moments of this young postseason so far, when Mike Tomlin was asked about having only 1 year left on his contract and deciding to walk off as the reporter was in the middle of the question. But turns out Mike Tomlin, the era for the Pittsburgh Steelers is set to continue. So the NFL's longest tenured head coach has informed his team he will be returning for the 2024 season, and his players have his back.
My thought is he's going to be the coach here. You know, if anybody's thinking it should be anybody else, then you're asking for a whole lot more than just that. Mike T is, wants to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Like, why would anybody else for anything else?
Yeah, I want to play for Mike T. It was huge in my contract talks. I don't want to play for anybody other than Mike T. You guys understand and see in the way that I talk about how much I respect and appreciate him as a coach, as a man, as a leader, and that's my endorsement for him.
All right, GoJo, we need to get the opinion of a real-life Yinzer on this thing.
Yeah, we had to ask a Yinzer today because, man, yesterday I was amazed at the response we got. As Mike Tomlin says he's coming back, I don't know if that was in question as much as would the organization or fan base want him back as the head coach. And when we called that crazy, a lot of people from Pittsburgh felt some type of way about that. So our buddy Jessica Smetana, kind enough to give us some time here as the biggest Steelers fan that I know personally, the co-host of Golic and Smetty. And Jess, I guess that was kind of my question is, it felt crazy to me, but you told me yesterday that there's a lot of Steelers fans that actually feel like this thing has run its course.
Yeah, and I should clear the record. I'm not technically a Yinzer, but I'm very Yinzer adjacent, so I'll take it. I think that it's an honor to be considered one. But yeah, Mike, I think that there's been like a faction of Steelers fans that have been rumbling about this for the last few years as the Steelers have really struggled in the postseason. And you saw that happen again this year. The Steelers have been outscored in the first quarter of their last, I think, 4 postseason games, like 76-20 or something like that. They haven't won in the postseason in 7 years. And I think fans are starting to get antsy about this fact that they haven't played in an AFC championship game since they played, I guess, 10 years ago or 8 years ago. It's been a long time. So people are getting, I think, a little riled up over it, but I do still think that the overwhelming majority of players, as you just heard, really, really admire Mike Tomlin. I think the organization they've never said anything bad about Mike Tomlin. In fact, the rumors about maybe he'll leave or maybe, he won't get his contract extended all kind of stem back to a report coming from, I believe, Jay Glazer a month or so ago. And none of that came from the Steelers saying, yeah, we're not going to extend him, or Mike Tomlin himself actually saying, yeah, I don't want to come back. So I'm not surprised that he told the team that he'll be back next year. It didn't seem like something that was actually going to happen despite all the outside noise. But I do think some fans, not all fans, but some fans do want to see them actually win a playoff game this decade because it hasn't happened yet.
Well, Mike, I want to ask you a question about something one of the players said. But Charlotte, this has to be more about the long game, right? Because they had a bunch of injuries. The Browns had a bunch of injuries. The Browns only had one more win than the Steelers, and the Browns lost in the first round of the playoffs, just like Pittsburgh. Or we see Pittsburgh not doing well there, right? So, I mean,
we're going to give Kevin Stefanski the Coach of the Year,
and that's exactly
was the part
right.
that blew my mind is from the outside looking in. We're going to give Kevin Stefanski Coach of the Year for doing ostensibly the same thing.
So this has to be over the years, right, Charlotte?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm interested that there are not, I guess, I'm not surprised that Yinzers don't want him back, to be honest, because I feel like this is the easiest thing you can do to appease a fan base, to show that you're trying to make a change, is fire a coach. I think Mike Tomlin is a very different coach in that regard because he has been there for so long. It's so rare to have someone who's there for that long, and they've had winning records. So it's this could somebody else do a better job than he's doing? I don't know, but I think that I'm like what we saw in New England, just to bring it back to the Patriots for a moment, is that Bill Belichick,
comparison,
like one of the greatest coach, if you want to say that. Everyone was like, okay, it's time for Bill to go. I went, when I was home for Thanksgiving, we went to the restaurant that I've gone to my whole life with my parents, and Richie, the chef, was like, he's got to go. I'm over him, Charlotte. And I was like,
wow.
It happens very quickly.
The Bear?
Yeah, I was just going to say a little bit. Shout out to Richie. I love Richie. But yeah.
There you go. So Mike, let me ask you internally, because you were a camp in Pittsburgh, you were coached by Mike Tomlin for a bit. Najee Harris said there needs to be more internal discipline. And we know Deontay Johnson and George Pickens have been a problem in that locker room and on the field at times when Pickens quit on a play. Mike Tomlin walking off on after a question surprised me. Hearing Najee Harris say that, Mike Tomlin is about as respected as can be. So this kind of surprised me in the locker room when Najee Harris said there's a lack of internal discipline.
Yeah, it is surprising given the personalities we know that Mike Tomlin was able to corral in the past, most notably in everyone's mind, Antonio Brown. And he's a guy that's lauded for how consistent he is day to day in the approach. The meetings are always very similar. You know exactly what's expected of you in the building. And so I do wonder if there is part of this just being a time thing. Like, Jess, when you start to see that as a fan, is this... what are the legitimate criticisms of Mike Tomlin at this point as a football coach? Because, again, what we see from the outside is a guy who keeps the floor consistently in a very high place. And I understand after a while when you're a fan, you become numb to that and start to think more about the ceiling. But, is that one of the things, this stuff leaking out in public, part of the legitimate criticisms of him right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the more legitimate criticisms from fans just come from years where, like this year, where they are playing well despite a bunch of injuries. That is something that he's always been good at doing, especially when there's been this awkward quarterback transition going from your franchise quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, to now Kenny Pickett, who has, struggled and also been injured a fair amount in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. And then you go midway through the season and you lose 3 games in a row to 3 teams that the Steelers, frankly, as a team that did make it into the playoffs, should have beaten. You should have beaten the Colts, you should have beaten the Cardinals at home, and you should have beaten the New England Patriots. And so those types of things happen year to year. And I think fans are more frustrated with that. And I think there's also an element of game management. Like the fact that he loses every challenge, it seems like, is something that I think fans tend to get a little upset at. That being said, like I said this on our show yesterday with your father, with Golic, you could have a lot worse of a head coach than Mike Tomlin. And I do think there's an element when you're a fan of be careful what you wish for. This guy has been the epitome of consistency for 16 years. And a lot of NFL franchises would kill for someone like Mike Tomlin to be at the head of their team. But I understand where the frustration comes from, because when you have 3-game losing streaks like that and you end up in the last place in your playoff seed, like it's just tough to win in Buffalo on the road when you might have had a better situation had you won maybe one of those games or 2 of those games. And again, I don't necessarily blame him for all of this. Roster construction it's not quite the same as New England, because that is not his fault. And Pittsburgh does have a new GM, Omar Khan, who had, I thought, a very good offseason this year, very good draft. The trade for Chase Claypool trade that ended up giving the Steelers Joey Porter Jr. looks better and better by the second. He ended up starting midway through the season. Same with the first round pick that they had. Broderick Jones played very well this season after he got a chance to start. So I think that this is something where I'm very interested to see who Pittsburgh brings in as their offensive coordinator. If there is another legitimate criticism to make of Tomlin, it's why did you bring back Matt Canada after last year? I understand that you want continuity with your young rookie quarterback, but he's gone now. It didn't work out. So who are you going to bring in to replace him? And if that's a knockout hire, there is going to be a lot of pressure to win more games and have a more exciting offense next year, because you have all these young offensive playmakers like George Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, who I think could make a huge impact on a team if they're allowed to score points on it, which sometimes it seemed like they weren't this year.
Bring in Matt Switzerland.
Matt Switzerland. Oh, my God.
Jess, we appreciate the time and the insight. Check Jess out on Golic and Smetty and the Dan Le Batard show later today. We appreciate you, bud.
I could keep going. How much more time do we have?
And she did.
Also, the NFL is rigged. Listen to Golic and Smitty.
Oh, God.
The Steelers would have won if the game was on Sunday.
I have 20 seconds to get through this intro. On Monday night, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles were dismantled by Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, man. Reigning NFC champ scored just one touchdown in that loss, an absolute meltdown. Now the brutal stretch of football, GoJo, has called into question the future of Nick Sirianni. Hey, answer me this. Will the trio of quarterback Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, and offensive coordinator Brian Johnson be able to continue working together? Whew.
I think we know for sure, and that was over 20 seconds.
No, it was not. No, it was not.
Yeah, no, we're gonna have to go and check the clock on that one. I'm not sure how we feel about that, but
damn you, GoJo.
I also feel like that trio. There's no way everyone's going to be back from that. Obviously, Charlotte. We've had a lot of conversation in the last few days about the potential of Nick Sirianni's future in Philadelphia being a lot more in question than I expected for one of the coaches that coached in the Super Bowl last year. And you brought up before the reaction to Philadelphia's fan base that you have, a begrudging respect for a fan base that, like Boston is full of smart, passionate fans, even if at times they cross the line.
Sorry.
What's that?
I said smart?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm like a smart sports fan, knowledgeable about the game.
I just
and things
saying
like
sports
that.
fans, and I'm including myself in this, are smart. It's like how smart can you be to stay in the bathroom because you think someone's going to score a touchdown?
I've done that before, by the way. It works.
Same. I said I am not. But yes, I continue. I do have a begrudging respect.
The proof is in the toilet pudding, all right? I stand by that. Okay, I'm so sorry. That being said, the subject of their coach in Philadelphia is interesting to me because, Charlotte, I saw someone on Twitter ask the question the other day of why so many people dislike Nick Sirianni or seemingly dislike Nick Sirianni from the outside. And I was wondering what your reaction to him is. I look at him and say it's because he's a bleep talker. He's a coach that has the audacity to conduct himself with some of that same moxie as a player in how he spouts at fans, how he contorts to the camera, all these things that are great, but it's a live by the sword, die by the sword game. I don't have a problem with people who talk their stuff, but you understand there's a price when things don't go your way. I didn't know if it was any deeper than that for you.
No, I mean, I think the best example of that would be after the Eagles beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Yeah. You remember that video where he said, Sirianni said to the fans, to the Chiefs fans, hey, I don't hear bleep anymore, Chiefs fans. See ya. The Eagles are 2-6 since then. So I think that I've said this before, when it comes to talking trash, you have to back it up. And if you are a coach who is talking trash and you are not on the field, so it is not entirely in your wheelhouse to make sure that you back it up. If you're a player and you're talking trash and you're really into it and you go out there and you have a great game, but the team just couldn't get it done. Okay. If you go out there and you play very poorly, that is just embarrassing. But if you're a coach, to do that, to take that chance and then risk having your players be like, hey, man, why are you putting that out there into the universe? Because you're writing a check that we have to cash. And I think that that is why Nick Sirianni rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And there's a cockiness to him that as a coach who didn't win a Super Bowl, you got to earn that. You have to earn that. Yeah. And I think that that is a dangerous game for him to be playing.
There are times when I am amazed how fans say a team is a failure when they get to the Super Bowl and don't win it. I mean, everybody understand how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl? Everybody says I'd never want to be on those Bills team that lost 4 Super Bowls. Well, then I don't want to be a teammate with whoever said that, because I will take going to the Super Bowl 4 times and losing rather than not go to the Super Bowl at all. So I think it does have a lot to do with his brashness. But, I mean, they were very successful in getting to the Super Bowl. And look at one of the differences. Well, a couple. He loses both coordinators. They were 10-1 at one point, but they didn't look like the team from last year. So where do we go with the coordinating situation? He changed play callers, Matt Patricia from Sean Desai. And also look at the quarterback and compare it to the Cowboys. Last year with the Cowboys, Dak threw, 15 interceptions. They had a bad year, and a lot of Dak turned the ball over. This year, Dak said, I'm not going to even throw 10 interceptions. He threw 9 in the regular season. Now, They were horrible in the playoff game, but his regular season was better. They won the division. Look at Jalen Hurts. Last year, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, didn't lose one fumble. They're in the Super Bowl. This year, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and he loses 4 of the 6 fumbles. So a huge difference, just like the difference in reverse of Dak Prescott, where that has a lot to do with it. This will be, I don't think Sirianni is going to get fired, but he's going to have to make changes, and I think going to make changes, Charlotte. But I think a lot of it, as much as it's hard for a D lineman to admit, rolls with the quarterback here.
I think going from defensive coordinator Sean Desai to Matt Patricia was not the smartest move. I also think maybe Matt Patricia is not the best coach given his track record the past couple years, to be honest. And so I think it's those decisions, too, that you have to answer for as a head coach. I'm by no means saying that getting to the Super Bowl is not impressive. I just mean to be a coach who doesn't win it and then your team is rolling and then you put, I get it in the moment, you're excited. It's just an example of the way that as a coach, you have to realize everything you do ripples out and reverberates and affects your team. And I think that's where Sirianni has not always done the best by his guys, I guess.
Well, Senior, I have a question for you. As a former player, seasons you did not win the Super Bowl, did you consider that a failure?
Well, I never got to the Super Bowl.
That's what I'm saying. As a player, if you don't win the Super Bowl, is that season automatically a failure?
So players also know where your team is. When I was with the Houston Oilers, we knew, now you go out to win every single game, but we knew we weren't one of the better teams, even though you go out there and you try and be one of the better teams. In Philadelphia, we had the best defense in the league, and we were close, and everybody thought we should get there. I still talk to some of my former players, and we felt like, especially 91, if not even other years, was our year. And Randall Cunningham got hurt, but we thought we could have won it other years. So we felt they were disappointments because other teams that had the best defense, the Bears in 85, you look at Baltimore, you look at Tampa Bay in the 2000s, would close the deal by winning the Super Bowl. We never did. So yes, there was disappointment there. There was disappointment in Miami when we had the best record, I think at 9-2 at one point, and then lost our last 5 and missed the playoffs. But if I got to the Super Bowl and lost, now remember, it's a guy who never got to a Super Bowl and lost. While I would be bummed, and I talk to former players and guys I played with and against all the time who went to the Super Bowl, and they said, yeah, seeing that loser confetti come down, at that moment you hate it. But after that, you realize you got to the Super Bowl. Again, I never got there, but when I heard Joe Theismann, former Notre Damer, say, I'd rather not go to the Super Bowl than go to the Super Bowl and lose. I'm like, are you kidding me? Said by a player who had already won a Super Bowl. Easy to say at that point. If you don't get there, you'd rather get there. And just like Mike, again, I keep going back to your national championship year. You guys got walloped, but so what? You were there. You have no chance to win the championship if you're not in the championship game. So give me it every time, even if I get my butt kicked. Don't care. At least I'm there and have the chance.
Yeah, but I think for this Eagles team, in the context of this conversation, it's about what it changes as far as expectations year in and year out. And you look at the roster that they brought back, which is almost, again, defensively, we can have a conversation about that. And Charlotte's point about what Nick Sirianni did on defense, I think, is sort of the inverse of what he got credit for in his first season. We're halfway through the year. He hands over play calling at that point. They go to a more run-based offense. We've seen the value Shane Steichen brought there. And so you're going to have to answer for decisions that look like panic moves at certain points with guys that are supposed to be your guy.
It is expectation as well. The Eagles were in the Super Bowl, actually had a 10-point lead at halftime and lost it. So a lot of it is, where were you the previous year? So what's the next step? It's not to regress, it's to the progress of it, and that would have been to get there and win it this time. So the expectation was certainly high for them.
The expectation's always high on Wednesday, and somehow we meet them. Charlotte, thank you so much, bud. We appreciate you.
Oh, Charlotte.
You're too kind. Always a pleasure. Bye, guys.
right, the drama surrounding where Jim Harbaugh will be coaching next season continues as he has officially interviewed with the Chargers and now the Falcons. However, it is being reported in his negotiations with the Wolverines, Harbaugh wants some interesting termination clauses here, Gojo. So he's looking for language in his contract that would make him immune from being fired for anything that could pop up here in the multiple NCAA investigations that are happening in the program. In addition, he's looking to delay the start date for a new contract, to have a lower buyout for NFL teams to sign him away. So what do you think? Grant him immunity, or is he maybe using these NFL interviews as some leverage to get a deal done with Michigan?
I think there's a little bit of leverage both ways, but it is definitely Jim Harbaugh, as Dad always says, swinging the hammer, because this report is designed, in my mind, Dad, to make Jim Harbaugh look like he's asking for too much. If you're Michigan, bracing for the impact that potentially comes with him leaving for the NFL. I look at all of this, and despite, my personal feelings about Michigan, not as a broadcaster and an analyst, but as a former player and a fan of Notre Dame, I look at this situation and I love it for Jim Harbaugh. The same school that made this guy take a pay cut after the 2020 season and publicly dragged him the way that went, now asking for the world on the other side of a national championship, is the exact kind of thing we could all only hope for ourselves at any point in our lives. And so I say grab that net, catch that beautiful butterfly, brother. And by the way, if you're Michigan, anyone saying no to that? If he would actually come back? Anyone actually saying no to that? He wants a 3-person arbitration team to basically hear the potential termination with cause hearing, if that were to be a route they go, with the potential NCAA sanctions coming down. And if I'm Michigan, I'm looking at that going, all right, so, if they're going to get us, they're going to get us.
How would you say no to that? Again, it's where you see when something happens to a coach, they can be fired for cause, which means they don't get any more of their contract money. Harbaugh is trying to have that taken out, to say where the AD cannot fire him for cause, and to go to what Mike said, it would go to a 3-person arbitration hearing, whether they could do that. He's trying to keep the buyout low until February 15th. In case he goes to the NFL, the buyout doesn't cost him as much. We're talking about a pittance of money, 2.5 to 1.5 or $4 million possibly. I'm not worried about, I don't think anybody's worried about that amount. But Michigan, listen, you get what you get right now, right? You were the ones that pay cut this guy. He took the pay cut, and now he won your national championship going undefeated. Smart move when he didn't sign the extension. So you are basically at his mercy on what he wants if you're willing to go that high. So he holds all the cards. He swings a big hammer. And you were right, Mike. Anybody out there in any job out there would love to have the leverage that Harbaugh has, because you use it. That's what you do, because it gets used against you. No matter how you feel, you have a great relationship with management, your friends, you hang out, you have drinks. When it comes to money and negotiation, all that is out the window. Right? All that is out the window.
Oh, yeah.
And it is about
all the
business.
Michigan man stuff didn't save him when they came to him and said, hey, you're going to take less money if you want to stick around here after a wonky pandemic season. It didn't help him back then, so it shouldn't save them now.
Yeah, I mean, they've offered him, a deal that's worth about $11.5 million a year, I think a 6-year deal. And in all honesty, he should swing for more than that. Why not? I mean, why not? I hate those 10-year contracts, but that's what he should be trying for, is that if he's going to stay there, the big long contract for more guaranteed money. We'll see. I do think he's going to end up with the Chargers. I think he's going to make between $15 and $20 million a year with them. And I think because he made so much of a deal, Mike, about being able to sit at the big table with his brother and with his father, I think there is something to him that in his mind says, I won a national championship, now I want to win a Super Bowl and be that coach that could do both. Because, coaches talk about it's all about the team, and I agree with that. I know it is, but they're still human. And just like I think Belichick wants to keep coaching because he loves coaching and wants to keep coaching, but I also think the human side of him has an eye on the Don Shula record and says, you know what? If I'm going to keep coaching, I got all these wins, I want to beat that record as well. So, I mean, you're human, man, so do your thing.
Yeah, and to the point about what a commodity Jim Harbaugh is, that he has to go with that. Now that we've seen Nick Saban retire, and at this point Jimbo Fisher doesn't have a job, Jim Harbaugh is now one of, I believe, 3 active head coaches in college football with a national champion. Or no, one of 4. It's him, Mac Brown, Dabo Swinney, and then Kirby Smart at Georgia. So there are 4 guys right now that have won a title in college football that are still coaching, and Jim Harbaugh's one of them, and he did it most recently, and you're going to an era where it's going to be even more accessible, and the Big Ten is consolidating power, and you've got his brother out here running PR for him, saying his brother Jim is the best team builder in all of sports. So I understand Michigan trying to potentially make it look like Jim's asking for too much, but again, I would ask any Michigan fan out there, I understand they're all pretty numb at this point to seeing Jim Harbaugh's name as interviewed for ex-NFL team, because this is now going to be every offseason for them and has been for a while, in terms of him wanting to have a toe still in the waters of that level of football. But given what it nets you on the other side for however long it lasts, like, Dad, I don't know if there's another candidate out there for the Michigan job compelling enough. And you know, I understand Sharon Moore, their offensive coordinator, who took over as the interim head coach during the suspension for Jim late in the season, was a lot of people looking at him as the potential coach in waiting there, a guy who acquitted himself, I thought, very well during that 3-game suspension. But if the impending NCAA sanctions proved to deterrent for Jim Harbaugh, a lot of people said, oh, we got our answer right on staff here. And that probably won't wait a ton longer, since Sharon Moore's seen as one of the rising stars in the sports. I'd assume the same would be told for Jesse Minter on the defensive side of the football. But even with that, I still feel like most Michigan fans would say, whatever Jim wants at this point, let's just give it to him if it means he stays.
And for the sake of both sides, that's one thing the person involved in this, being Jim Harbaugh, has to weigh. While you want what's best for you, you're also a team person and understand decisions have to be made relatively quickly, right? For both sides. The NFL team needs to know they have you as a head coach, and the college side, they need to know what route they're going to go, because now you're dealing with 18-year-olds and portal guys that are saying, is Jim going to be the coach or is Jim not going to be the coach, and what direction are we going to go? So that's a big part of it as well. And I think Jim's in that unique position of, having kind of his pick, right? He can stay at Michigan where things are great, or what jobs are available. And this year, right now, there's 8 available, correct? With some say maybe another one, depending on what happens with Mike McCarthy, even the Nick Sirianni talk, which I don't think is going to happen, but the potential for another team out there. So it's about Jim Harbaugh, who will have options. Do you wait till the right option comes along? This year, again, 8 teams. You got a lot of choices. Now, I'm not saying all 8 teams are going after Jim Harbaugh, but if he showed interest in a certain team, I would imagine that team would have interest in him. So it's also about what's available at the time each year. And the good thing for him is he can do this each year. He can dip his toe in the water each year to do this. So does he wait for a situation that he deems better to go to the NFL, better than what many people say right now at the Chargers, a non-playoff team, but with a highly advanced quarterback?
And I think for Jim Harbaugh, you're at the absolute height of your powers right now. You're coming off a national championship. This roster had built towards that. And while Michigan's used to turn over an NFL talent, especially defensively, J.J. McCarthy the other day said that he's declaring for the NFL. Blake Corum's going to be at that level. A few of the guys that were big pieces on your offensive line as well. So there's going to be differences and reasons why a team like Georgia is already the betting favorite to win the title again next year. Sark is portaling his ass off right now in the wide receiver market and some of the guys that he's brought in. So there's going to be competition, and Jim Harbaugh right now is king of the world. So you're right. He is going to have his pick this offseason, and Michigan is going to deal with it the same way. They're used to this. They're not new to this. They're true to this. But, Dad, you mentioned an interesting part of all of this is the ripple effect of a lot of these coaching changes in the portal era and the uncertainty it can create. I think it's a testament to Michigan, the fact that they've dealt with this with Jim Harbaugh for the last few off seasons, and we haven't seen a lot of roster attrition there or a lot of worry lead to players departing during these weird middle grounds in the off season where all of a sudden you've got questions about his future there. Emerson, as we're seeing now the ripple effects of Saban leaving Alabama and that hiring of Kalen DeBoer there, We saw some interesting comments come from Jed Fish's press conference as he was announced as the next head coach for the Washington Huskies that I think are kind of an interesting case study in the job for coaches now in this era of college football coming in and trying to rebuild when there is so much volatility.
Yeah, it's a 7-year deal that he has inked with Washington. So he was introduced yesterday, 2 days after telling his players, by the way, at Arizona that he's taking off. Apparently, said meeting in Tucson was very short. So he walked in, he said that he's leaving for Washington, and then left. And players are not happy. They're pissed off here. This is what Fish had to say in his introductory press conference about the way he left Arizona.
And I understand that I'm going to have to earn our players' trust. I'm going to have to earn our community's trust. I'm going to have to earn our university's trust. And that's what I will take that challenge, and I accept that challenge, and I will give you everything I have to earn that trust. I understand what happened here a week ago. I know what happened in Tucson 2 days ago. And I will give it everything I have.
He's not going there alone. He's reportedly bringing the whole Arizona offensive staff with him to Washington, including Pete Carroll's son as OC. Is there a right way, though, to leave a program, GoJo?
So I've thought about this a lot, Dad, and I remember going through this when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame for LSU, and there are a lot of people that felt some type of way about the dismount there. And I remember talking to someone and sort of thinking about how it would have affected me. I was someone that went through a coaching change as a player from Charlie Weiss to Brian Kelly, but that was a firing. Charlie Weiss was fired for what went on and for what we didn't accomplish as a team. But for a team that has their coach leave, is there anything they're going to say in that meeting that's actually going to make you feel better? Is there any amount of time or words that they could throw out there that are actually going to make you feel better about the fact that the knowledge, what you know, that coach chose to leave for what they deem a better opportunity there? And so the more and more I look at these things, whether it was Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame for LSU or Jed Fish leaving for Washington, I don't really get my nose too wrinkled about how they stick the landing here, because unfortunately the game's the game. Agents and everybody else are incentivized to leak this kind of information to the press before most of these coaches ever get to discuss it with their teams, just based on how these kind of conversations go. And so this is kind of the unfortunate circumstances, and it's why, despite the protest from a lot of people, I look at the portal as the logical answer to this is, all right, the schools get to make whatever decision they want, the coaches get to make whatever decision they want, but so do the players, and you guys have to deal with the consequences of players being able to now get themselves out of a situation they didn't sign up for.
So there are things that I understand the new school, and like I said, I am old school in some things and new school in some things, and I do think there is room for both. It's not like everything old school is out of the way and it's all new school. And this is one of the things I probably will never waver on, Mike, is I am a face-to-face person. And I get the new part of college football. I understand that the players can just leave and everything. But when you're the head coach and you brought players in, whether it's, an 18-year-old or, through a portal, mostly through an 18-year-old, and had him on there and said what you said about how you plan to build that program, which I know players shouldn't believe anymore when a coach is sitting in your living room. And you mentioned Brian Kelly. Remember Brian Kelly, the way he left Cincinnati to come to Notre Dame, was talked about a lot as far as him not basically doing anything. You stand in that room and you talk to the players. I will not waver on that.
But I'm saying they did. Both of them did. They stood in the room and talked to players. People talk about the brevity or length of that meeting. I'm saying, what do you want them to say in that moment?
You know what? To walk in, that you can walk in and say, I'm leaving, and then you walk out. To me, there's got to be a little more to it. There's got to be a little more. Listen, I was here. I thought I was going to be here. This is an opportunity. You put it any way you want. This is an opportunity for me to go, like players in the portal now have an opportunity to go. I've enjoyed my time. There's a way to do it other than walking in, saying, I'm leaving, and walking out. Make something up. I don't care. Show that you gave a damn a little bit there, even if you're faking it. This may sound stupid and this really may sound old school, but I don't care. This is something that I truly believe in, and I think we've lost this art of face-to-face conversation even if you disagree on something, whether you scream at one another and then end that talk, or you rationalize and you talk something out. To me, there is something about it. And when you invest time as a head coach and invest time in players as well, and you're going to leave by your choice, to me, that's just me. I think you owe to stand in that room and talk to them for a bit. And it may not be a great conversation, but tough. That's the way it goes. Sometimes we don't have great conversations, but stand in there and talk to them, and if you have to take a little bit of backlash for it, so be it. But you stood in there, you talked to the guys, you explained the situation, and like I said, it still may not be amicable when you leave, but you did it. And this is something, like I said, I may sound like that old guy, but I firmly believe in that.
But I just think they did. Like, they checked that box in these situations. Most of the guys we're talking about explained the situation, explained the opportunity, I'm sure thanked the players and all that stuff. But beyond that, I when it was asked to me, because I remember I was someone who kind of reacted like you did, and then I thought more about it. I'm sitting there as a player. It's like, at this point, you know the game. Like, if you're a college football player at this point, especially in the portal era, you know we're all here about business. All this kumbaya stuff, it sounds nice. It might sell T-shirts for fans, but at this point, you kind of know the drill. And so if a coach comes in and says, hey, I'm taking the job here, this is a great opportunity for me, thank you guys for all the hard work, that's a 2-minute conversation. I don't know what else the back and forth is supposed to be with everybody involved.
Well, that's fine, but I'm not hearing that. I didn't hear that from Jed. I'm hearing the conversation was short and sweet and he left, or not even sweet. I'm taking it and leaving. If he said all that, then that's fine. I guess I'm talking in general, because we've had coaches not even talk to a team. I want that guy in there talking. Huh?
Have we had coaches not address the team before they leave? That would be news to me.
Yes, we have had that. We have had that. And I just think somebody should be in there. And why am I drawing a blank? Used to coach at Connecticut, then went to Maryland. Why am I drawing
Randy
a blank?
Edsall.
Yeah, Randy Edsall handled it unbelievably poorly. Again, I'm just basing off the reports I hear of what he said. If he was in there and had a conversation, then so be it. So this is more, I guess, let me just say this is more a general conversation to me. You go in there and you talk to that team. And to your point, again, what does it mean? It just means you're being a decent human being as far as I'm concerned. And you know what? We're still allowed to do that in this day and age. Be a decent human being about something, because the other side of it is you're right about. The players, while you can be mad for that instant, you know what happens? You move on to the next coach. You forget about that guy and you say, okay, now I'm playing for this guy, and now it's about what am I going to do to stay on this team, to play for this team, to play for this coach. I get it. When that guy walks out the door, you're mad for a bit and then you forget about it. So, and you move on, and we see that more and more in college. But I don't know, what can I say? I believe you walk in there and you have a conversation in general. This is in general to coaches with that team before you leave.
And I'm saying I believe most of these guys are, and I think we get hung up on how long. It's like when we grade apologies in sports. Like, we go through and we're making sure everyone checked the right boxes and do all that. And ultimately, it feels like kind of a pointless exercise, because we usually know what's going on there. It's someone trying to get back into the field of play. It's someone trying to check the boxes with their employer. And in these situations, like, yeah, there are relationships formed and things involved here. And then there's the larger business of that that's, gotten out of control. And I think that's the driver on a lot of this that creates these situations where you've got information coming out to the public in a lot of chances before coaches have a chance to address it. So they're walking into a room where everybody knows what they're going to say. Everybody knows why it's happening. And it's a situation that I think on both sides is just one of those, it's unfortunate, but that's the way the business of the sport, which again drives all the change that we're seeing, makes all the wailing and gnashing of teeth about the portal and NIL sound stupid to me, because it's way bigger than all of that. It's a byproduct of things that have long been what the sport is now, and are not the fault of the players, or not as much the fault of new rules as people want to insinuate, but gets it to the point where, again, I just look at these situations and go, yeah, I don't know how much there is to say in this spot. I understand, you can handle it, and I would hope that everyone, and I'm not accusing, by the way, Jed Fish, Brian Kelly, or anyone of handling this in a way that's uncordial. These are just recent examples of these circumstances that get to a point where, again, it's a conversation that, to me, I don't know has a good outcome no matter how you handle it.
As long as you have the conversation, and coaches haven't. That's my point. Have the conversation, and I'm cool with it.
Well, we're having the important conversation, and I'm glad that we're doing it here on the show. Coming up next, let's talk about some players that have chosen to leave the fray that is college football.
As expected, at least for the most part, Caleb Williams is entering the 2024 NFL Draft, announcing his decision on social media, saying, I still have a lot to learn and I'm ready to do whatever it takes. As a kid, I said this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life, but I didn't work this hard just to reach this point. I will continue my journey to make that little kid proud of the man I will be for many years to come. I'm excited for the future, and I am officially declaring for the NFL Draft. And Senior, you were on this all along, saying he was never going to come back to USC, despite some people thinking maybe he would because of NIL money, maybe the rumors that he didn't want to play for the Bears either.
I always wonder, because you say things for a reason, right? And I always wondered why. Maybe it was to see how much money he could get up to at USC. I don't know. There had to be, because I never believed he was going to go back. But maybe he was just seeing the amount of money he could get it back up to. I have no idea of the reason he did that. But this is one of those situations, Mike, where as I talk about leverage and all that, I don't know. There isn't any, right? Unless you truly are going to go back if somebody offers you the king ransom. But I don't think he ever was. You're going to be the number one pick in the draft. Why are you going to try and F that up, right? By going back and either playing horrible or getting hurt. You're not going to reach. All you're going to do is maybe be the number one again the next year. But you have some hurdles to leap over if you're going to do that. So to me, it was never in the cards that he was going to not be in the NFL Draft.
I also think a lot of the headlines around Caleb Williams were fueled by fake NFL news accounts that are a continued indictment of the hell that Elon's made this website and how difficult it is to find and ascertain like valuable, good information. Like, I do think part of that just leaked into the Caleb Williams experience, because while I think at the beginning, like back in college football season, there were some actual comments from his father that I believe came out that sort of implied something of this nature. And the time it took for him to make an announcement that most people thought was a given might have all lent itself to that. But to me, it just kind of seems like due diligence that you do for a lot of these high-level prospects now. And maybe there are NIL conversations going on behind closed doors. I mean, a lot of people are looking at Ohio State and imagining the bill that they're racking up in there, given the amount of NFL talent that's coming back there onto their campus. Now, I think there are certain reasons as well with pro prospects that make sense for some of the guys involved there. But Caleb Williams, you're right, is at worst going to be the second overall pick in the draft. By most people's estimation, is going to be the number one pick in the draft, and is always going to face the difficult problem that comes with the NFL's current draft structure, which is bad teams get the top spots. Yep. And so as long as bad teams are always going to be picking, you're going to be at risk of being in a franchise that kind of sucks.
Yeah, you are. As people need to understand, and sometimes owners don't, is the C.J. Stroud Houston Texans situation was an outlier. That is no way, in fact, the norm. Yet, unfortunately, there will be bad teams where the owner is saying, look what they did, why can't we do it? Okay? But it is way more the exception than the rule. You're, for the most part, going to go to a bad team. And he probably is going to be the number one pick. It is so wild to think about the path again. Remember, Caleb Williams beat out Spencer Rattler to be the quarterback at Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
So now Caleb is known for his years at USC. Spencer Rattler's been quarterbacking at South Carolina. It's just more indicative. We did this around the Heisman as well. Of 6 of the last however many, whatever it was, were transfer guys who had won the Heisman. So it is pretty wild where a lot of these guys start their journey. But I remember going back to Michael Vick, who a lot of people thought he needs another year in college to hone his skills a little better. But he was going to be the number one pick in the draft. You don't pass that up. You don't, because too many things can happen that next year in college. Now, I know a guy like Peyton Manning did. He wanted to go back and try and win a national title. So I certainly get it. You know, I don't think, I'm trying to remember back, I don't think Michael Vick was talking about, you know, do I want to come back and have Virginia Tech help them win a national title? I don't think that was going on then. But I don't think you pass that up. Too much bad can happen. You can't get any higher than the first pick of the draft, and then you will be coached in the NFL or in that professional league, whatever sport we're talking about here, and you learn. But you don't pass up that opportunity.
No, it is a difficult prospect, too, because you're not always leaving in certain instances for better coaching at the NFL level,
right,
at the organization you're going to, or just a place that has the kind of organizational control that some of these top-level college programs. When Najee Harris made those comments about the Pittsburgh Steelers and maybe needing more discipline in the locker room, he made it, I believe, in reference to Alabama and what had gone on and what he was used to inside that program, helmed by Nick Saban, where they've got control of everything, and that had been a program that had done it its way for a long time at a high level at that sport that he was referencing there. A lot of times these players are leaving. Now, I don't know the current makeup of Lincoln Riley's USC program.
Right.
They obviously got back online in a big way last year. This season was a decided step back for them. But in general, USC is one of the programs you'd imagine is well run enough, especially with a guy in Lincoln who's been a head coach for a long time now. A lot of these guys are going to leave their college programs for much less organizational stability for some of the bad teams picking at the top of the draft. Look no further than Bryce Young, who I can't imagine what he looks around on a daily basis and sees as the whiplash from going from the ultimate organizational stability at Alabama to whatever the hell David Tepper's doing in the Panthers right now.
I look at a couple of players. You look at, now, for J.J. McCarthy, Michigan was mostly a running team. He threw and they needed to throw. But a guy like Michael Penix, you know, if he in fact does go in the first round, now it might be later, so it might be to a better team, right? But along those lines, he had 2,000-yard receivers 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of that in the NFL. So you're right. You can go from high talent that you're going to see in the NFL to teams that are trying to build that talent back up. But that's why you get paid, you know, top pick money. You're going to get a lot of money to be the guy you're going to build around and hopefully get more money even after that. But there is also a lot of pressure. And when you miss, we've seen the teams that miss. And you know, if you got 4 quarterbacks going in the first round, 2 are going to hit and 2 are going to miss. And man, when you miss, what it costs you. What it costs you down the line.
I mean, look at what Drake May or Caleb Williams is likely going to replace in Chicago. I mean, Mel Kiper's talking about them being able to flip Justin Fields and potentially get another top 10 pick if you were to deal him to a team like Atlanta, who picks at 8th overall in the first round. Like, Justin Fields is the cautionary tale. Trevor Lawrence is still dealing with the remnants of that cautionary tale, where you go into these situations that are highly volatile. And we've said, the Chicago Bears situation, because they decided to bring back Matt Eberflus, does feel very volatile. You're going through another offensive coordinator now for either Justin Fields, who would stay under center, or a new voice that's kind of the sign that, hey, you've now dealt with whatever went on with the defensive coordinator to start the season. You fired Luke Getsy at the end of the season. The last guy left on the rung is going to be Matt Eberflus, who was a question mark of if he'd be back. That's what you're walking into and tasked with saving if you're Caleb Williams or Drake May. And that's a tall order for anybody. I mean, south of Joe Burrow, who else have we seen come in and immediately as a rookie? Maybe now CJ Stroud and what's going on in Houston might be the next example.
Right.
But those have been few and far between, and guys able to come in and instantly change an organization's fortunes.
Yeah, and the tough part is if it doesn't happen, the blame falls on you, right? You can sit there and say, well, they didn't have a lot around him to build. That's what we said about Justin Fields, right? And then they got DJ Moore this year, and that was at least, a better option than he has had. And things started to get a little better, but it's on your shoulders. It's like, okay, well, there's no talent around him, but he's supposed to make, the talent level rise if he's this good of a quarterback. But I think everybody needs to remember they're rookies. They are rookies, and they are going to make huge mistakes. C.J. Stroud is an exception. Peyton Manning threw, 25 interceptions, 28 interceptions his rookie year? I mean, it's just meant to be a learning year, and that's what we always say. Veterans in the locker room know that, and it can bum them out at times. They get why the organizations do it, but they get a little bump thinking it's going to be a wasted year. Though, again, Houston, the outlier, here they are still in the playoffs.
You mentioned DJ Moore. Shout out to him. I saw he went on the St. Brown brothers, Amon-Ra and EQ St. Brown's live stream the other day, and they asked him about his off-season workout regimen. He says, I drink Mountain Dew, I smoke cigars, and I go and hang out at Disney World. And then I show up at OTAs, and I stretch and pop off. That is king energy right there. If you can do it, more power to you, brother. And DJ Moore apparently can get it done. minute. Was I the little like mushroom guy that I got? Was I like a Koopa Troopa?
Yeah.
You sons
It's
of...
a great game.
That was a great game. Video game dads. And I mean, honestly, speaking to your era, Super Mario Brothers 3 might have even been after your time, quite honestly.
Loved it. Loved that. I mean, Donkey Kong was one of my favorites. Joust was one of my favorites. That was always when working at ESPN, we go down to ESPN the weekend, and I'd play.
What the hell?
Look at your head. That's uncanny, actually. Your head is oddly shaped.
I don't have a cone head.
Awesome.
Damn you all.
This. That's going to become my avatar. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So,
boy.
Guys, this is easily
or is
becoming.
that a movie?
No, I mean, it's both. Yes. It's both. Wow, I'm actually proud of you right now.
Thank you.
This is a very good moment for you.
This is the perfect intro for Senior versus the Internet is what it is.
Golic versus the Internet, one of our favorite segments now where we show Golic Senior some of the latest videos, trends, and overall weird stuff people are doing and talking about on the Internet. And we're going to get his reaction, starting with hot sauce battles.
Ooh.
I've got word that the fighters are entering the arena. We've got Cholula up against Tabasco. Woo! This is a classic fight. Yeah. Let's get it started. Absolutely. Tabasco versus Cholula. We might see a knockout.
Big swing. Oh my goodness, Jack, there's Cholula all over the place.
I think it's in my mouth.
Definitely in my eye.
All right, let's move on to this next fight. Old Bay versus Guy Fieri. Entering in style. This fight could go either way.
Yeah, Jack, it really could. Big swing, come out the gate. Oh my goodness! And Old Bay drains Guy Fieri onto the floor.
Oh, I don't want to see that again, but we just did.
We just did.
Old Bay drains Guy Fieri is not a phrase I ever want to hear.
Wait a minute. You guys are just like breaking it down.
I'm sorry,
like
dude.
That was something normal. What the hell was that? I thought
hot sauce
when
battle.
They said hot sauce, I thought it was like a hot sauce tasting battle. They just
wait a minute, Ben.
They just put the bottles on a string and threw them out there and waited to see one hit the other. That was it? What the hell was that?
I'm not a fan. There's too much good hot sauce being wasted. Cholula, the elite hot sauce, I'll put that thing on anything. I have the biggest, girthiest bottle in my cabinet right now at home. Anything.
I'm with you.
Goes on.
I'm firmly Team Cholula if we're doing actual hot sauce battles. If you're not watching on the DraftKings Network or YouTube, yeah, guys just put this on a string and then let them go at the same time and see if they collided, which hot sauce would break the bottle of the other hot sauce in this elaborate, beautifully built UFC ring. And, Dad, I'm not going to lie. The sensation of the glass break is deeply satisfying for me. So I actually was a huge fan of this.
Not going to lie. One of the stupidest things I have seen.
There he is.
Can you show me anything that's more stupid than that right now?
Actually, big man, we can. So how about this? A Twitch streamer, Extra Emily, spending not 1, not 2, not 3, but 7 hours eating water with a fork.
What?
Chad! I think our last final. It's our last final droplet. We're done!
Our society sucks.
We're in the wrong industry, man.
I mean,
I don't want to know how much money she made doing that. I don't.
Somebody spent 7 hours dipping a fork in a cup of water to drink. See, I guess here's what I'll say, and why I won't completely say this is asinine, but it is.
Oh.
I think, and I hate to bring it into this, but COVID, which obviously was horrific. But what it did is it made everybody be home all the time, right? So you had to find ways to entertain yourself. So I can see where some of this stuff happened then. But why is it happening now when we're all out and about again? When you're trapped in your house, I get you doing stupid things because you're bored out of your mind, and I could see it then. Maybe not the drinking water with a fork. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. And after you finish that, she went, woo, I did it.
Yeah.
So then the camera goes off. Then what? What did you do?
We've officially reached the decline of society. That's what we have reached at this point.
I'd imagine for her, she collected a lot of money from that 7-hour stream.
Yeah, dude.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, I mean, you got like kids on YouTube who review a toy for 30 seconds and they make $5 million.
I need to find that out. I need to know. What's her name? Extra Emily?
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah, careful Googling that.
No. I'm not going to. I'm not going online to do anything. I'm going to wait for somebody to tell me how much this young lady actually made doing that.
I need a Scott Hansen intro to that. 7 hours of eating water with a fork.
7 hours now of commercial-free water fork starts right now.
Listen, if she made a ton of money doing it, then more power. Then I get it. More power to her, because this is where we are. Do dumb stuff and get a lot of money for it. So everybody's going to try it.
If we set up a GoJo and Golic Twitch stream, would you go on there for an hour and drink water with a fork?
Let me tell you what, Mike. If I'm going to waste an hour of my life doing that, I better be well compensated. I'm not just doing it for kicks. Okay?
Wow.
So I'm going to need to know. I'm not going to do it and then wonder how much I'm going to get. I'm going to need to be said, hey, Golic Sr., you're getting X amount to sit there for an hour or 7 hours and drink this cup of water with a fork. That's the only way you're enticing me. Not, hey, would you sit there for 7 hours and drink this cup of water with a fork and maybe you'll make a couple of shillings for it. That ain't happening.
All right, you know what? Emerson, this is a good transition. I don't know if this is in or out for my dad in 2024. We need to explain one final portion of the internet to my father before we go here.
All right, so on TikTok here, Senior, there's this in and out trend. So rather than share like New Year's resolutions for 2024, users are sharing their individually tailored ins and outs list. So referring to trends or behaviors they consider acceptable, which are in, or rejected, out for the year ahead. So here's one that went viral on Spotify's TikTok.
Okay, these are my ins and outs for 2024. For my ins, first up, we got club music. Okay, I'm tired of the depressing, sad songs. I'm trying to get turned. Podcasts that make you dumber. I actually don't even think this is necessarily new. I just think we should start owning up to it more. Moving on to my outs. One person monopolizing the aux in a group setting. In 2024, we're putting that to a vote. This next one's actually the one that I feel the most strongly about on this list, and it's not letting people sing along. If my song is playing, I'm singing at full volume. Do not turn around and be like, shh, I can't hear the music. I can't hear the singer singing. I'm sorry, did you buy tickets to their live show?
All right, podcasts that make me dumber. Could not be us.
Well,
oh no.
Well, I mean, that you want to talk about a general term. I mean, how are you defining that? That's your own, obviously your own personal taste. I didn't understand the one, people hogging the what? People hogging
aux cord. It's what you use. It's what you used to use. It's what you use to play music in the car.
Auxiliary cord.
Somebody's phone in. And
okay, auxiliary cord. Okay, I didn't know what she was saying there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and I completely agree about singing along. Man, belt it out, baby, belt it out.
So, Dad, we now have 2 bits of homework for you. We're going to need your ins and outs list for our TikTok, and then we're going to need you eating water on a Twitch stream. Are you ready for this?
I'm only eating water on a Twitch stream if you're guaranteeing me some kind of money.
I could see him doing something similar to like the hot sauce battle, but with like donuts.
So
swinging
that is one of my.
Ooh.
I'll give you an in and out I have right now, and shockingly enough, it has to do with desserts. Out, and I've said this for a long time, and I want it out. Fruit in any pastry.
What?
Fruit in any pastry or dessert. Out. Whether it's whole fruit, whether it's compote, I don't care what it is. If it says a fruit name that's in this compote or not, out. I don't want it. In more cream-filled desserts. More cream-filled desserts. What I will get into, I know we're running out of time here. I asked your mother about this, and she sent me some ins and outs that were way more about her than about me. I think she's sending me some messages right now.
She wants you to
You
go
are out
shopping
in
more.
2024. No. right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. And if you can't catch us live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, then check out us or our great guests, Jessica Smetana from Golic and Smetty and the Dan Levitard Show, Charlotte Wilder from Oddball with Amin El Hassan. Both kind enough to join us today. You can listen to that wherever you get your podcasts or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Before we get to this, that, the third, we were doing my father's ins and outs for 2024. And during the break, we realized that my mom, who was helping him with this, actually weaponized the ins and out list as a means to just do self-improvement work on my dad for the new year.
It's unbelievable. Now, your mother has been listening to my show, your show, wherever we've been doing shows forever. She's a phenomenal field producer. She's helped us get guests over the last couple of decades. She does a great job. So I texted this morning. I said, listen, they want some ins and outs for the year from me for 2024 of what I would do. So she's like, okay. Literally, Mike, 10 seconds later, she texts me back, ins and outs. I mean, like she has been waiting for this opportunity. Now, she did these ins and outs for as I should have these as ins and outs. The ins and outs in drawing your own bath, read more books, will try harder to learn electronics. I mean, those are her ins. Those aren't my ins. Those are her ins for me. I mean, she took this opportunity to say how she wants me to change. Babe, I'm 61. It ain't changing. All right? This is what it is. Those were her ins. Her out was just one. One out. Watch less video content. What? I take the iPad into the bathtub that you were already in. Do you think I'm just going to do a 180 on this? Draw my own bath, number one, and then lay in it and not have my video content? Woman, who do you think I am? I mean,
careful,
what
she's
am I doing
watching.
Here?
Careful.
I was going to say, you need to be careful about biting the hand that quite literally feeds you.
Or the hand that quite literally bathes you.
I mean, honey, what are we doing here? Wow.
You know, I know what we're doing here. Mom's sending you a message that even at this stage in your guys' marriage, there's some stuff you need to work on, big fella. And I think you need to heed her words and make sure you keep the happy wife, happy life thing up. It's worked well for you now. You don't want to screw this up, especially at this point, because without Mom, you'd be dead in a week. There's no doubt about it.
No, I would.
You can live with me, man.
Let's get to this, that, and the third while my dad digests this interesting bit of feedback he got. And start off with this. Miss America is a full-blown badass. Sunday night, we had the Miss America pageant for 2024. Miss Colorado, Madison Marsh, was crowned the winner, becoming the first active-duty military service member to win the title in the pageant's almost 100-year history, according to the U.S. Air Force. She's a lieutenant in the Air Force. She recently graduated from the Air Force Academy in Colorado. So, cool. Dad, an awesome moment to have Miss America, who we go to the talent portion of these pageants usually. Her talent is she will get you to submit and could kill you if she wanted to.
Yeah, I love this. I love her quote. I'm very excited to get to represent women who can break stereotypes and share what it means to be a member of the military community and Miss America. That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. Don't mess with this one, right? I mean, I think this is absolutely fantastic.
What a resume. She is a graduate of the Air Force Academy. She's now 2024's Miss America, and she's pursuing a master's in public policy at Harvard's Kennedy School. Like, this is, I mean, a resume that will rival anybody out there.
First date with her? Like, she's just like, hey, can I take you for a spin on my jet?
Yeah, I mean,
my warplane?
First date, when she reads the resume, I'd walk out and be like, lady, you can do a lot better than me. I'm not going to let you slum it right now.
Yeah.
You need to be with
you're
a future
slumming
head of
right
state.
now. Exactly. You're slumming. You can do way better. That's impressive. Congrats to her. That's awesome.
Emerson, let's go total oppo on this one with that, with Bill's Mafia continuing to innovate ritual sacrifice.
Yeah, I don't know if Miss America is going to end up landing anybody from Bill's Mafia as a future date here. So after beating the Steelers the other night here, guys, people are like, man, what's the secret to the Bills' success? Well, there is a pit at the site where they're building this new stadium, and I guess there's this trend on Twitter and TikTok, or at least people are pointing it out, that
there's a rumor.
Yeah, there is a rumor here that a fan fell into this pit, right? and then they won like 6 games ago. So since then, a fan has been sacrificing himself or herself to the pit before every game. And now they've won 5-6 games in a row here. So people are like, absolutely, feed the pit.
So we've got the pit, we've got the reemergence of Sean McDermott's 9/11 speech from 2019 that went viral, that have all been at the forefront of this win streak. Dad, I love the idea of the pit for a franchise that already has fans that are jumping through tables, lighting themselves on fire, covering themselves in condiment. Ritual sacrifice is a built-in part of being in the mafia. So the pit honestly does not seem like a huge departure from that. This makes a ton of sense.
No, this is why fan is short for fanatic. I mean, for this reason alone. And I love people. I love people like this. But it blows my mind how that the belief goes so far as, yes, throwing yourself into the pit is going to give us a win. If I sit a certain way, we're going to win. I knew a guy one time who said he walked into a bathroom, and when he was in there, his team scored, so he stayed and said bathroom for the rest of the game.
I've done that.
I don't get it. I don't believe in any of that stuff at all. But just because I don't doesn't mean that fans can't have a ball with it. They can't have their thoughts about it, and they can't enjoy it the way. And listen, Bills Mafia, they are something else anyway. I drink with those fans any day of the week because they are just absolutely great fans.
Marrying into a Bills family is one of the best decisions I've ever made.
This is one of those things where even if it's not true, I don't want to find out the opposite. There's a Twitter user that claims that they have a doctor inside the hospital who has seen a patient from the pit every weekend since this first happened on Sundays when the Bills have played. So let's keep it going. Even if you're not, we need to find out which person next is going to, because I'd imagine you're celebrated like a conquering hero. But now imagine, Dad, imagine coming up the stakes for this weekend. What if you're the pit sacrifice that loses the game? You got to leave town. Yeah, you're seen as the unworthy sacrifice. Then that's got to be a big worry.
I will say, knowing a lot of people in Buffalo. Again, my wife's family is from there. There are many of them who were not happy that Taylor Swift decided to skip Buffalo on the Eras tour, and they're like, "This is the universe being like, no, you're coming either way to watch your boyfriend play football and lose because we're going to sacrifice an individual in the pit before the game."
What if Taylor jumps in the pit and then all of a sudden steals the good vibes from Travis?
Oh, damn.
Now, see, chestnut checkers, baby. Chestnut checkers. You guys digest that. Emerson, let's get to the third here, as we've got a new addition to Michigan lore coming off their title run that has nothing to do with Harbaugh.
Yeah, so Connor Stallions, he's looking for a way to make some extra income right now after leaving the program. So the alleged mastermind behind the sign-stealing scandal, now selling videos on Cameo for the price of $70. So what do we want to have Stallions do for the show?
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Go ahead. Maybe he's stealing ideas from our weekend show, The Sweat, for your show.
It would have to be something involving stealing something, right? In the ways to do it. You'd have to put it in a nice way, obviously. Boy, oh boy, that's a good one. Yeah,
if you were on trial for robbery, having Connor Stallions do a cameo defending your innocence would be a really funny way to go to jail if you knew you were guilty.
There's an employee fridge here, too, that sometimes people put their lunches in. You could do like trying to steal someone's lunch and eat it.
Ooh, office. See, that is the proper thing, is like having Connor Stallions be the kangaroo court for in-office theft like that in the refrigerator, which I wonder if post-COVID is still as big a problem. Emerson, like, can you attest to that in the DraftKings office right now?
Yeah, I've seen a few folks go on there and maybe take a little snack or two that didn't belong to them, for sure.
I don't know how you would do that or why you would do that. If it's got someone's name on it,
I mean, Dad, there's plenty of stuff you've taken out of the fridge at home when we were growing up that was one of ours as a leftover that you just decided to take part of and ruin our lives.
And I'll say, if I've seen it in there, like passing it, if I've seen it in there for a day or two, I'm like, okay, this is free game. This person doesn't want this anymore.
Mike, can I ask you a quick question? Whose refrigerator was it in?
Look up.
Oh, God.
Yeah, whose refrigerator was it in?
Oh.
Whose house did you bring it in? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Christine's, your wife's.
Yeah, my mom's house, where you're going to draw your own bath and read more books from now on.
You know what? I'm leaving. I'm done.